recording. Call to order the May 10th Site Plan Review Technical Advisory Committee work session. First item is 77 Meredith Way, a proposed subdivision.
Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon. Chris Mulligan from Boson and Associates on behalf of Jeff and Randy Collins, who to my right, to my left is Brenda Colbo from TF Moran, the project engineer. So what we've got here, actually, I think it's sheet number 3 of 5 in your package, is a plan that is before the ZBA for a variance next week, actually.
Sheet 4.
Excuse me?
Sheet 4 or 5.
Sheet 4 or 5, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we were seeking relief for, or what we are seeking relief for, is to install a second dwelling on a single lot and a second driveway on a single lot. Requires some relief from the ZBA. And in consultation with some members of the planning department, they weren't really thrilled with that design and thought that there were some opportunities that could sort of maximize things for all people involved. So Nick was kind enough to kind of mock up a proposed sketch of proposed subdivision, which is number 5 of 5 in your sheet, and that's what we're here for if we were to proceed with that full-blown subdivision as opposed to variances for a second dwelling on a lot. Couple of items with this that we wanted to sort of explore with you all here, just to for the Collins to be able to make a informed decision on which way to go after we break up. This would require, obviously, planning board approval for the subdivision. It would require at least variance for frontage, as far as I can tell, and I don't believe I would need, or we would need, additional variances besides a frontage variance. But Peter, if you have any thoughts on that.
Right, the second lot would be deficient for frontage.
They both are.
Oh, they both are?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because what would be the lot?
75 apiece.
75 apiece. So.
Oh, so they're both deficient?
They're both
right?
deficient,
Right.
yeah.
Got it, all right, thank you.
Yep.
So we would need to go before the ZBA no matter what,
Right.
but we would get frontage variances if that were the direction we would go in. Beyond that, where it's a 2-lot subdivision and we're extending, or we're proposing, or the suggestion is we would extend the road 80 feet to accommodate the second driveway. Would that need to go through a formal TAC application, or would that proceed, assuming we got the variances we needed, would that proceed directly to the planning board?
I think it would be part of the subdivision
Okay.
application.
So that would be a TAC?
Yep.
Okay. All right, then with respect to the proposed design, and again, this was just kind of a conceptual sketch that Nick put together. I think Jeff and Randy's thoughts on this would be to maybe invert the proposed houses so that the driveway, or so that the garages are in the front and not in the rear. Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah, that'd be correct. It's the driveway entrances, could be where they are, but
Yep.
I think the driveway would be a lot shorter.
So we would have less impervious surface.
Yeah,
And,
right.
So a final design, we think, would probably kind of flip the dwellings around. Does anybody see any major issues with that?
So you said two different, sorry, there were two different things said.
Are you saying flip the houses in the
Yeah.
driveways? or
No,
flip
what
the
he's
houses-
saying is take the 2-car garage from the backyard and put it in the front yard. I mean, I have some concerns with it, but I trust you're going to be able to take the curse off the foundation and put, off the garage being in front of the house, which is not characteristic of any of the houses in the neighborhood, by putting, double hung windows in on the street facing side of
Right.
the garage, right? You just can't have a blank wall with two garage doors facing Meredith Way and
Okay.
be appropriate. So I think if you scale it and detail it properly, it can work, because it's
So
not
it'd be
optimal.
like more like a courtyard style garage type of, pull in and,
Well, textured paving would be great, but I'm not saying that. I'm saying the gable end of the garage, if you have a pitched roof on it, would have no less than 3 windows,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
Double hung windows to match the house.
So in other words, you don't want to be looking at
You don't
garage
wanna-
doors.
Right.
Yeah, or even a blank wall.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Windows,
we don't-
yeah.
yeah.
2
no.
windows on the garage parking level and 1 in the attic, a smaller window in the attic. Well, I don't know how big of a volume you get, but whatever, it should really be integrated
So-
into the house, so it's not so apparent it's a
Yeah.
garage sitting in front of the house.
So that would require that to be like what they call a courtyard garage type of design, I think. Yeah. Which is doable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have I think initially on our the ZBA thing, that was one of the plans that I had said that.
I'm
yeah.
confident you can pull
Yeah,
that off.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so beyond that, I guess the real potential showstopper, I guess, is, the extension of the roadway that we would propose. I guess we're just looking, this is a work session, so we're just looking for some feedback as to whether or not, we're confident that TAC would recommend approval to the planning board if we were to propose an 80-foot extension of Meredith Way with, a 16-foot width. Nick, I'm assuming you took that width from what exists on the ground out
Correct.
there today?
Correct, it's wider. The existing pavement is closer to 20,
Okay.
maybe 19 to 20.
Yeah,
So
so
I-
it would
yeah.
flare in, it wouldn't have that joint, but we are comfortable with it as long as you're providing the turnaround for the city truck to follow.
Yeah, and so as far as the turnaround, what Nick suggests here is just
easement.
an easement in one of the driveways, not a hammerhead.
And actually, likely it would be the other one.
Okay, yeah,
If the
Give you
pump
more
is 30
space.
feet long.
yeah, okay.
So,
Either one would be fine. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not a problem.
What's the reason for the narrow?
we just
Didn't need it.
didn't need it, it's only single car passing.
I mean, there's enough drainage issues out there you're dealing with without putting unnecessary pavement on it.
Okay, so,
So other areas, other things you just should be aware of, and they're gonna come up no matter which type of house you build, is you're gonna need to extend the electricity probably underground from that pole that's shown on the plan, the bottom left corner.
Okay.
Because other than that, you need to put additional poles in if you don't. So that's gonna happen. We also don't have a water supply down there for the second house.
It's,
So
Can
that's
we-
gonna happen, no matter what you build, you're gonna need to do some sort of water service extension for that house.
from the existing pipe.
It's gonna have to go through the park, because there's no water main in Meredith.
There's 1-inch copper, I think, right?
Right, which is big enough for one house, not 2 houses.
Okay.
So, again, that's gonna happen no matter what, I'm just telling you right now, so that you heard it now.
Yeah, so I have a question.
Sewer's not a big deal.
Okay, I do have a question about that. If we were to go with the multifamily house, would that still be a requirement?
I haven't seen a layout for multi-family house, so I don't know.
Well, I can tell you, I don't know if you guys know, but we built the house next door. It's a multifamily. We used the existing 1-inch copper off of that for that, so I assume it's adequate enough for a multifamily if we were to go that route.
It's based on the plumbing code.
Yeah,
Without sitting there, not gonna say.
Okay.
Yea or nay.
Okay.
If you build two houses, you need two water services. And that's really it I see for issues.
I'm sorry, Dave?
I said that's really all I see for issues.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Nick, in your email, you had mentioned that the city would want to see us remove the briars and brambles that are along Meredith Way in front of the lot. The Collinses have some concerns that the neighborhood may not be in favor of that. So I'm just,
Why don't we address that, given it's our right-of-way, and if it's not meant to be? I mean, I think Peter Rice or somebody up the food chain can make that decision. You're gonna obviously remove half of it,
Yep.
building the driveway. I see no personal reason why you wouldn't remove the rest of the invasive species there, and we put something better in its place. But if people are in love with what's there, then it won't move.
okay. So, do you have any other questions?
So are you suggesting that the city would
But what?
replace what's there or something, put up some sort of?
I have no idea.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, you'd be removing it for at least 60% of the run there with that roadway.
Yeah.
So it's the remaining 40%. What we do there, I don't know. I'd take it out and start over at it.
Yeah.
I get there's a screening benefit, but it's largely invasive species that are there.
Right.
No, we understand.
Yeah, I know
It's
you
not
do.
an argument
Yeah,
we're making
not-
with you, but we just expect some consternation amongst the neighbors. All right, I don't think I have any other questions. Brenda, do you have any? Okay. I mean, unless there's more feedback.
I just have a question about the rain gardens. Are you going to provide more detail on that?
Right. yeah.
Okay. You'll look at the drainage on the site and make sure it's not going to create a nuisance for the neighbors. That's the biggest thing, really. It's not a ton of drainage, but we don't want to create it on abutting properties or anything.
I would just make sure that you have a door going into the home, not right at the actual home, within 50 feet of the road, unless you want to put a sprinkler system. And if you do decide that you don't want, to be within 50 feet, or that you just want a sprinkler system anyway, which is great. It would be a 13D system, which is much less expensive than the average multi-family home or 13, which is commercial structure.
So multi-family is a bigger system.
Yes, once you have multi-families, you have systems. Surface safe spaces, have to be protected, the supply.
Any other comments or questions? So would you, I know you're not going to make a decision right now, but if you go this route, you'd pull the variance application?
The one that's pending?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, we'll make that decision the next day or so.
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay. So this water service that's going to go out to Pine Street, I take it, is, once it's installed, who's going to be responsible for underneath the thing there? Underneath the park?
That would be on city property.
Who would? Okay. So the shut-off would be,
Crosses the front property line.
and then it'd be, shut-off would be in front of the house?
Shut off would be in that driveway
Yeah.
somewhere, we just sort of right it.
Okay.
Yeah. And then it would be your responsibility from there on. You'd have to build it the first time, but then if something goes wrong, the city would be on city.
Okay.
Everything clear? Do you have any?
Clear to me.
Yeah, I think so.
That's kind of what I was talking about there.
Oh, back.
On the, bringing the garage to the front.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So not necessarily a courtyard.
Well, I have something I can
Yeah,
show you.
whatever. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
You can do it a number of ways.
Use the general comment that you wanted to present. The garage, as it presents to the street, should be more reflective of a house structure and less of a garage structure in that
Right.
context, and that'll help also.
And we're in agreement with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you for
thanks.
coming.
Yeah, thanks.
Next on the agenda, we have 161 Deer Street. For site plan subdivision. Thanks. Site plan. All right. please
Good
go-
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Tom Ballin. I'm the developer for 161 Deer or 88 Maplewood, once we get our addresses straight. I think you know everybody else on the team, so I will turn it over to John.
Thank you. Tom purchased this lot and there were some development plans. It was part of a subdivision. So on the plan set, the second page is that subdivision back in 2015, 2016. This was known as Lot 5 of the DSA subdivision. And it went through some approvals, and since HTC went through and got final. Is that right, Carla? Did get HTC approval?
Yes,
But,
currently has.
and it currently has that sort of extended from that. But it didn't go through site review. There were some plans that were developed as a part of the application. Was asked to do like a concept of building on. Some of those plans were kicked around. There was an easement, a restricted covenant placed on the railroad land behind the lot. That was part of what the prior developer did. So what that allows for, or what it allowed for, was a placement of the building closer to the property line in the back without having to worry about area of windows and those kinds of requirements for buildings closer to property lines. There's the existing conditions plan, the demolition plan. For right now, it's a one-story cinder block building, and so it has an I business in the front left, and G.L. Rogers' office front right. That building would be removed as well as on the pavement on the property. The next plan shows the replacement of that with a new, get this right here, 4-story building with a penthouse. And there's a couple of things that, in looking at how the building fits the CD 5 requirements, that there's a few things that are going to be in need of relief from the zoning ordinance, a few things that don't quite meet the zoning ordinance, so I guess I'll talk about those now. The height of the building, so the ordinance allows 2 to 4 stories with a penthouse, which the penthouse adds 2 feet to the allowable height. This building had previously, and in this version, there's parking below street level. And, as we know from the building across the street, et cetera, its proximity to the North Mill Pond, various studies of the soils. We'd like to put the floor of the garage at an elevation 8, so that it stays out of the water table. When we do that, we have a requirement for the spacing to the first floor. Then the first floor has to be 12 feet. The other floors require a 10-foot floor to floor. So the penthouse is also 10 feet, and that gets you to the ordinance 52 feet. 12, 3 10s, and another 10 gets you 52 feet. what we're proposing is 58 feet for a couple of reasons. We have the 12-foot first floor, but then we would like to go 10-8 between floors, because 10-8 allows for a better coordination of HVAC equipment in the sandwich between the floors. It's just 8 inches per floor. So that just adds 2 feet. The other height, though, comes with the average grade calculation. What we have is a situation where the corner of Deer and Maplewood is at elevation 15, and then as you go down Deer Street, it slopes, so that as you're getting to the entrance, which is shown on the left side of the lot, you would enter in that driveway that exists now to serve the bank, which is the property on the left, and the applicant also owns that property. Incidentally, it's at elevation 11. So when you do the average grade plane, you come up with another potentially 4 to 6 feet, or 2 to 4 feet of height, which puts a total at 4 to 6 feet above what the 52 is allowed. The next thing is the finished floor above sidewalk. So we're trying to, we do match ADA entrance and match the grade at the intersection with the entrance to the building, which is the curved portion at the street intersection. That area is a separate lobby at a separate elevation. That elevation is too low when you have the basement floor at 8 to accommodate the ceiling height. So there'd be a dual stop elevator in there, but then the rest of the building needs to have a first floor that is higher. And that first floor elevation puts you more than 36 inches above the sidewalk elevation. So 50-foot door spacing is another requirement that we are talking about. 50 feet along Deer Street. We meet that. We intend to meet that. Maplewood, we can talk about that. We would rather keep that door that we show on the north end of the building where it jogs. There's a door there, and but we anticipate potentially a larger tenant not needing additional entrances, and it's also a less pedestrian traveled street. So we're talking about that and looking for some feedback on the 50-foot door spacing. The front yard is a 5-foot maximum. So what we're running into is that because the floor elevation is above the sidewalk, we start at that intersection and ramp up along Deer Street going to the west. We have a ramp, a landing, a ramp, and then we get to the floor elevation and have the 2 doors. So putting the building back a little bit more than 5 feet allows us to have a suitably wide walkway, and then have the retaining wall that we would like to place on the property to hold back that height. And we're also looking at some ways to maybe not need that, which Carla might talk about later. The railroad requires a setback of 15, and we'll probably be asking for some relief to go closer, something like 10. The previous building was proposed to be only 5 feet, taking advantage of that 10 feet. That's a different issue, I think, from the railroad setback requirement. And then front lot build out, I think we kind of meet the intent. It's about 250 feet of building along the front. but some of that wouldn't meet the definition because it's set back too far. From my understanding, the indent at the corner, the curved part, is set back too far. It doesn't meet the definition. Same thing with the area that's in the north along Maplewood. It is building, you would see it from the street, but it's set back. Terrence can talk about the green areas there. We're showing a brick sidewalk. We're showing reconstructing parking spaces on Deer Street, putting in some bump out islands for landscaping. There's 4 spaces there now, so this would be reducing, I mean, there's 5 spaces now, excuse me, we reduce it to 4. But I'd be interested, there are some plans that show different configurations in the future for Deer Street. We can talk about that. On the Maplewood side, there's shown an area that accesses the street. There is a transformer there, an easement to Eversource facility that has switchgear and transformer. We'll be adding a transformer. They would like to have access to that area, so we're proposing to show a turnout off of Maplewood over on that side. The next sheet shows some thoughts on the landscaping.
Hey everybody, Terrence Parker here. So as you know, it's very narrow spaces that are left over for the plant materials, and there's a requirement that there's one street tree every 30 feet. In this plan, if we cluster or use columnar trees and then cluster them in the spaces that we have left over, we can exceed the requirement of one tree per 30 linear feet. There's actually 9 trees plus 2 small trees at the lobby. At the corner there you can see. So all the green space is articulated here. And in the back, the client wants to put some landscape materials back there, and we as you probably realize, we have to deal with some utility corridor there, and it's between 10 and 13 feet, or almost 14 feet. So there's room to do more columnar trees back there. There's also the opportunity to screen the transformers as you're coming into the city from Maplewood with some kind of sculpted fence along the edge of the sidewalk as you approach the city from the west and north, with the graveyard on your right. So there's that opportunity. There's also another wall space on the southwest that the client may be interested in doing some kind of bas relief or mural on that wall face as well. So there's plenty of opportunity to do ground covers and edge plantings. And there's enough room in the parking space, abutting the parking spaces, to actually get 2 trees in there, I think, just because there's a lot of soil volume in there. So there's opportunity to get street tree cover. So I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have them.
All right, moving on, the next sheet is utilities, and, I'm sorry, the next sheet is the parking plan. So the parking level is accessed on the southwest corner of the building. So you come up the drive aisle between this building, drive aisle being between this and the bank and on the other adjacent lot. The ramp is on the top and turning in. There's 30 parking spaces, and there are spaces labeled A adjacent to those. Those are storage spaces. So we labeled as storage spaces. So you could store whatever there. You may store a car, but the project is going forward with the 30 spaces, which meets the ordinance requirement for parking. The calculation is 1.3 per unit, 19 units is 25. And I don't think I mentioned it's going to be a 19-unit residential
above first floor commercial, and then you need 4 guest spaces, so 29 would be needed. The next sheet shows the utilities, and there's water, existing setup. I did the Deer Street reconstruction, so those services are shown. We were anticipating the possibility of bringing the sewer out Maplewood Avenue, and there'd be a grease trap in that drive pull-out on the north side. And Dave's shaking his head, so he can tell me why we can't do that later. And it's going to be all electric, so there won't be a gas service. There'll be a new transformer, though, for the building electrical needs. The next slide. It's just a rough grading plan, sort of following the street elevations at this point. And I don't know if anybody else has, want to talk to this plan at all, Carla, or?
I think all I would say, there's a couple new faces, so I'm Carla Goodnight from CJ Architects. And the only thing I would say about this, as John mentioned, there is a previously approved Historic District Commission certificate in place, but that is for a 5-story different building than we're looking at doing here. We're actually before the commission tomorrow night to do our first work session on a 4-story building with a penthouse. This building, we are proposing that elevated sidewalk area that John described, which is also part of the prior approval, and that same treatment can be seen on the Fidelity building right across the street. They've also elevated the sidewalk there for guessing similar restraints. And so we're going to be looking to develop an architectural style that's reminiscent of the old train station that used to be on the lot, and just railway corridor architecture in general. But I think the significant difference here is that we are dropping to a penthouse, 4 stories in a penthouse, which is a significantly less impactful. And then as far as the front lot line build-out goes, we are missing a pretty good chunk around that transformer cluster in the corner, which creates a little bit of a challenge. And then we also want to set back that entry corner, which also is another subtraction. And then we'll be looking to work closely with the HDC on developing the elevated sidewalk and how that interacts with the front lot line. So that's kind of where we're at this point.
I guess we don't have anything else. We're just looking for your comments here today.
All right, thank you. Shanti?
The risk of sounding ignorant here, the parking plan, you said there's 29 dwelling units, is that right?
19.
Okay, so,
Yeah, it's a typo.
Oh.
The note says 29, but then the count
so
says 19.
okay,
it's
so you have 1 per, and
Yep.
visitors is another 4.
Yep.
And then your accessible spot, because you only require 25, so 26 would require 2 accessible. So 1 through 25, so you have 1, is that the formula?
Right, yeah, we need a second accessible. You got that right, yeah.
And then as far as like the radius of turning in, like
Yep.
Spot number 30, for example, I suppose someone else will look at this, but you've got 23 feet, so that's all doable. It's not too tight, huh? You get a van in there, and
At spot 30, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
There's plenty of backup space to the right. I think that one works.
because it angles out.
Yeah,
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Pat?
I just have a few questions. So I'm a little confused on the storage. Are the A's, are those parking spaces, are those not parking spaces? Oh, these A's.
Oh, the A's,
Yeah.
those are storage spaces, so they won't be counted as parking spaces.
But they're parking spaces.
but they're capable of storing a car there.
Put a bike, a motorcycle, a boat,
Yes.
a car.
Yeah.
But because they're tandem, you can't, from an ownership standpoint later, you can't say you have 50 spots because you can't strand somebody's car behind somebody else's car. So they're tandem with the unit.
Yeah, tandem parking.
So if they're tandem parking, that's, I don't know about the other rules, but that's fine with me. But if it's a storage area that you can store anything, I would have to look at that to see if that would be allowed.
Yeah. Calling them storage is a new term of art, and I think you should just call them tandem parking.
Yeah, like you can't have
They're
stuff.
fine.
Cardboard boxes, falling over,
Yeah.
and.
You know,
Lighter fluid.
yeah. I mean, I get the concept that if you don't have parking spaces, you want to go parking spaces, but you gotta be a little careful with that.
I think we dealt with this on 175 Market Street before tandem parking was allowed, and there's that space behind. So, and I think it was deeded with restrictions, so we'll check on that.
It's allowed.
Yeah.
It's allowed in the code
It is
to
now,
do tandem,
right,
yeah.
Yeah, we also have a maximum parking thing, so I don't know if that's gonna be an issue that we have to address. I don't know either, I had a feeling that's probably what this was about, something like that. Yeah, I think we got some feedback that we would need a conditional use permit.
To exceed the maximum,
Yeah.
add it to your list, right?
Does the tandem parking require additional handicap spaces?
The which?
Does having, if you consider them all to be
No.
parking spaces, would they have to be more handicap ratio?
You could, I guess, if you wanted to get wildly creative.
Well, if depends on how you're looking at them. And
And they're dedicated to each unit, so it's kind of unfair to do that.
But there's 19 units, right?
Yes.
But there's more than 19. Or is there more than 19? They might have been.
There's 22 tandem spaces. We're allocating some parking to commercial, even though it's not required.
And I think the accessible spots will be based off the required number, not
Correct.
the amount that were voluntarily given. So they would be okay not adding additional accessible spots, because you're basing it off your required number of parking.
No, it goes based on the total number of parking spaces, regardless of the requirements.
But I don't know that that question has ever come up whether a tandem counts
But I
as
think
two.
because they're restricted, there'd be wiggle room in that. Because they're restricted to one owner.
If you crosshatch them so that it's clear that it's not really a parking
I
space,
think you just call them what they are, which is parking.
but you start striping out all those extra parking
You
spaces.
don't want them, we don't want combustible mulch in there. We want them.
You need
parking,
stuff.
Right?
Combustible gas tank.
But we agree that spot number 15 could,
Stone walls would be fine.
yeah. Spot 15 could be another ADA spot
Even
easily.
coachables.
So.
15, yeah.
Yes, it
Yeah,
could be.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Then another question is, where's your second exit from the parking level?
I'm sorry, I apologize, there's no door drawn, because we're pretty close to grade there.
At the back.
Yes,
Will it be along the travel lane, or will it be
along the back travel lane there would be a
some-
second.
Something to delineate?
Yes, we'll get that door on there.
Not driving, so not blocking up.
Yeah, you're not in a driveway, I
No,
think is what he's
it's a
saying. You have to
curve,
line
curve.
something.
Right, I
to
think
say-
there's a sliver next to spot 1 there where you could have enough width to walk up there.
We would just want to make sure that was
Mhm.
clearly not blocking up the travel lane.
Yes.
And then on the first floor, understanding these are architectural plans, so. It appears right now that neither exits directly into the outside.
I'm missing a door on that stairwell on the backside. That one would go directly outside.
The rear one, so that
The
would be
rear
an
one.
exit passageway.
Yes. That would be directly down that stair and then straight out on that, into that side. Yeah, right now the door is showing going into the maintenance, but it would have to be on the other side, and that's a wall.
And you may need, in the mechanical utility space.
Mhm, right.
Some sort of vestibule or something, and maybe
Absolutely.
separate from your exit passageway.
Mhm.
just out of curiosity, so are you going on the other lot to get into the garage?
Yes.
You have to. So you go around the bank on both sides to get in and go out, right? Because
You can,
the driveway that's right next to the building is too tight to turn into the garage. You can't do that. So you're gonna need to come in from where the old driveway to Gary's used to be, go around the bank to come in and out.
Yeah, because that aisle
That
there.
parking aisle that's gonna be left, that's gonna have to turn into angled parking for the bank.
Yeah, because they won't be able to get into those spaces. So that aisle's only 20 feet at its widest point. It narrows down. You gotta have at least 22, 23.
So you're gonna have to enter on the lot 3 and then.
Well, the left of that lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, lot 3.
Is it actually lot 3, or is it the left of the building on lot 4?
Well, you get the drive-through right there for the bank, so after that, it's the property line again. Before you cross 2 lots.
Yeah, those spots might just go to parallel, because kind of making them angled doesn't, you end up with 3 or something, you know?
They may stick out even more if you angle them.
Yeah, so they might go to parallel, but I think you'd have room, if you went parallel, to swing into the garage from that drive. Certainly do a template.
If the spaces were on the right side against the new building, then yes.
Hmm.
You'd have to morph in the parking spaces up against the new building. And then you still gotta exit, so you still have to go through to lot 3 to get out.
That opening's only 16 feet wide, right? There's a narrow entrance to be right into the exiting lane when you're.
So I assume.
In the garage ramp?
Thoroughly vetted.
Yeah, I think on the
driveway
garage
out.
ramp, you.
Yes, so it's currently proposed, this would be an entrance only between the two buildings. There is two-way traffic that currently the curb cut is on lot 3. There is an easement plan in place that would remove that and move both lanes of travel onto lot 4. So lot 4 actually goes quite a bit beyond that drive-through. And it was, the lot line on that side, if you go back to like slide 2, was done so that lots 4 and 5 are clearly in the historic district, but lot 3 is not. So there's quite a bit of lot 4 extending over there. But it's got travel
So you need to
easement.
move that driveway.
Keep going, Peter. There you
And
go.
rearrange all that parking.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And the lot 3 development plan?
Also uses that same driveway.
Yeah, and it put easements on lot 4. Because the bank building is staying for a while.
Yeah, the bank building, not much is going to happen. Honestly, almost the entire paved surface is under travel easement. So it's
Right.
going to.
You're gonna have to show how all that parking gets reconfigured to make that new driveway work.
Yeah, and I guess there's a question of, the big question there is, do we show what's supposed to happen on lot 3 that shows that
you're
everything
gonna
looks
have to do
great,
it.
or?
You're gonna have to do it now
You
because
have to
you're
show
gonna
whatever's
get
going to
cars.
work for you, otherwise you'll be waiting for lot 3 to get built, if you're
Right.
showing it.
Right.
Or you're building whatever you're showing.
Yeah,
before lot 3
I
is built.
understand.
So,
Be nice if the lot 3 was
Huh?
going somewhere. Is it going somewhere? Is it approved
Small
still?
one.
Yes, okay.
Pat, are you all set? Okay.
Yes.
And Peter?
I guess for Terrence, will those trees in the back of a big building like that on the north side with a 10-foot fence or whatever it is, 6-foot fence on the other side, make it? Do they not need light or circulation or
Well,
anything?
I think there's plenty of western, I mean, it's.
Isn't that facing
it's
north?
Northwest light.
Have you been on the backside of my garage lately?
I mean, but it gets, there are plenty of trees that are understory trees in the forest, like carpinus, that grow
In the dark.
in under canopies.
Okay,
So,
Mushrooms.
mushroom trees.
no,
Mushroom trees.
the columnar carpinus Musclewood or hop hornbeam is a good tree to grow in
Okay.
urban soils and low light.
Okay, good.
And it,
So you're on it.
yeah,
Okay,
Something
great.
from Norway.
There's a tree that grows in the dark, Terrence knows where it is.
Inside the forest.
That driveway on Maplewood, what do you expect to be the use of that? It's not a great setup where you either have to back in or back out of it. And it's a busy spot on Maplewood, a lot of traffic there with a signal. And
If you go down a few slides, or up a few slides, or, let's see, no, the other way, sorry. Yeah, right there. Oop, no, jumped over it, there. No, keep going down, sorry. Next one. See that right there, see the T transformer, that's a new transformer? There's two things Eversource is doing back there. One is a new transformer for this building, but they're also connecting the high voltage loop along the back of lots 4 and 5, and then connecting over to the intersection of Deer and Bridge so that they can complete their high voltage loop. But they need to be able to reach over and pick that transformer out. They can't do it from the rail side.
so it could be that, it would be,
We
Curved up,
figured the police
and you
would be
could-
hiding there to arrest people who run.
Yeah, that's what, we'd like to donate it, what's the police representative? It's a great spot, revenue spot. I mean, if it's concerned that it would be inappropriate to have it as a place for occasional deliveries, it would be left curb up, and then when somebody needs to go in there, they chalk
Yep,
the edge.
and that's probably okay.
So Eversource needs it, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Four parking spaces on Deer Street, are they 22 feet long?
I think the ends are 22, and then the middles are 20? Is that I thought the ends were 22, and then the middles got to be 20.
I'm not sure that those bump outs are actually gonna work in physical space because of the turning radiuses of the tractor trailers and everything.
Yeah.
We have to look at all that.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
Because the right turn is coming off of Maplewood, coming down there, that's going to make it hard for them. And the alignment coming across from Deer Street doesn't line up all very well as it is. And like you mentioned, there is a plan in the future to eliminate the parking on both sides there and add a travel lane when this area gets developed fully. The traffic studies that were done originally showed
In
the
which case,
need
the
for
bump outs are in the way.
Yes.
So, personally, I think we should think about putting the trees up against the building and put them in the street trees, like across the street. I think it makes a lot more sense, but
say that again, David?
put the trees in like they are across the street, so they're in the sidewalk instead of jammed up against the building.
Okay.
We have a bunch
So
of
just show.
notes, I guess I can ship these
Show
over to you,
in the
John,
short
but-
term, parallel parking like it is now.
Yeah.
Hold the curb line.
Yep.
I mean, if there's a chance to jump out the curb a bit to provide a wider sidewalk for better tree planting, we could look at that.
Yeah, keep in mind that there's no space on the ground to move anything, so what you have there is locked about as hard as it could possibly be.
Yeah.
Because of that underground sewer that's there.
Gotcha.
So if anything, I think the catch basins that are there are partially in the driveways, right? So if anything, the curb wants to move back toward the building half a foot or so. It can't go out toward the street, it has to go back if it's gonna go at all.
Okay.
So Mark reviewed these a little bit, and we just want to make sure that you guys are cognizant on
the city's gonna make you put in your water meter room wherever the utilities come in from the street. So as soon as they go through the foundation wall, that's where the water meter room is. So right now you're showing A parking spaces there, that they can't be there. You're gonna need to show the mechanical room there in that heated space, right where it comes through the foundation wall.
What do you think about on the first floor in that same area? Because we're thinking putting mechanicals up there because we don't have as much need for tenant space and so forth, so we'd stub it in and right up at the same spot. And it comes right through the wall. So it's, right, I mean, it's either going in and down.
Yeah, no,
or
I know,
in and
I
up.
know what you're saying, I just don't know how you restrain those valves on. Usually they get bolted to the foundation wall so they can't blow off.
We can work with that.
Yeah, so it's gonna require some intricate detailing
That for the sprinkler room,
for,
but the other water service, I think there's a separate location.
no, they're both right,
They're both right next to
they're
each
already
other.
there.
Oh, okay,
They're
they're
built.
both right together.
Yeah, 4 and 8.
Yeah,
Yeah. And you might be able to route those along the side. I don't know if you got enough room to route those up the side of the building and then go in. I don't know. But you just need to think about it. Wherever those,
Right.
that's right where the water meter room is gonna be and the fire
Yep.
suppression room is gonna be right there, so.
Okay.
We can afford to lose that spot if we need to.
Obviously, you're gonna have to abandon the water service that's there, the existing building.
oh yeah, we'll have to go back to the main.
Yeah, you're gonna have to figure out how you're gonna bring communications into the building. You're gonna need to show period lighting along the sidewalks. Grease traps need to be looked at.
Say what again?
The grease traps.
The grease trap location you said wasn't.
Yeah, so
That was okay.
we're gonna rebuild that sewer line along Maplewood Avenue, and we gotta slide that sleeve under the railroad tracks.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you've ever done that before, but you gotta open up
You're gonna need to go
60,
back.
70, 80 feet of territory, and
Uh-huh.
so we're not really gonna want your services right there. Pouring sewage under the ground while we're working.
That gonna, timing-wise?
Yeah, I don't know what it's gonna
don't
be.
know what the timing's gonna be?
We were gonna approach the railroad to replace it when they replaced the tracks last week. So.
They need to do that soon. That's an awful crossing.
Oh, they did
It's
it last
done.
week.
Last week.
They just
Oh, they did it? Oh, I haven't been by. Oh, sorry. Take it back. So, we can slide up the sewer connection maybe, and then.
Zach caught it too. There's a sewer line showing going to the drain line on that plan, which is a typo, I know.
Yeah.
Roof drains, we need to talk about roof drains, how they're gonna get connected to the drainage system, and which pipe they're gonna go into.
So, can I slow you down, or you want to get the whole list out?
Go for it.
So what we're thinking is the roof drains would come into the back side of the building. I know Terrence,
Oh, yeah,
trees
you mean
are
go out
in
of
the
the
way.
backside of the
but-
building?
What's that?
You mean go out of the backside of the building?
Come out the backside and then do
Not
some.
go into the building, go out of the building.
Come out of the building.
Right.
Say go
Okay,
in?
Good.
Yeah. Come out of the building on the backside.
Okay.
And then run it through some sort of like an R-tank, slow it down type system, and then connect it to the main drain line that runs under the railroad, the big 48-inch, and
Okay.
that's what
There's
we're
enough
thinking.
There's enough real estate to do everything back there?
We're gonna be looking at that real hard next, but there is some real estate beyond the building before you get to the drain.
Okay.
So 2 questions for
And
you,
I know
Dave.
I know you know about the soils, so I won't even say that, but.
On the pipe, Dave.
Yeah.
The 48-inch, how far below ground is that, and how full of water is it at full high tide?
Oh, it's full. It's under pressure. We actually need to put in a second pipe. It's not big enough.
Right.
Is that sort of the plan with the Maplewood project, that maybe that will happen?
Right now, the plan is to put another, increase the outfall that we have,
Mhm.
and then run up hopefully, the road on the side of the cemetery, but we gotta negotiate with the railroad. We haven't started that yet.
Okay.
So if that fails, then we'll be looking to expand our existing easement.
Did you hear about the pending sale?
Yep. I have.
Oh, the railroad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Period lighting, are the ones across the street still the standard? Okay.
Yep. I'm just gonna send this right to you, John.
I don't want to fill the silence, but just so, I just want to make a
There's a
note.
lot of stuff here, but it's all detailed stuff.
Okay.
In order to keep the R tank and pipe work and everything and connect to that 48, it's going to require adding about a foot of elevation along the back of the building.
Yeah.
I just don't want to be accused later of adjusting the grade plane solely for our benefit, but we need to keep those structures underground so you're not looking at stuff. But
Right, and that system has to be aligned. Right?
Yeah.
To be waterproof.
So you didn't talk about drainage of the basement. Are you gonna be dewatering this?
The idea is we're at elevation 8,
You're okay?
we're okay.
we'll have an emergency sump, but not continuous dewatering.
An emergency sump to go into the line that doesn't have any room. But it won't be all the time, at least that's good.
Correct. I mean, base flood elevation's 8 feet, which is where this garage floor is. So the hope is that between that and being 2 feet above the existing water line, we won't have that issue, or at least not in the next decade.
And then you're gonna test soils, I imagine? You're gonna have to test soils to get, when you excavate. You haven't done any of that yet?
Yep, there's quite an extensive geotech study that's already been completed. Yet another reason not to dig too deep.
Yeah.
I would note on the bottom, kind of bottom right on the Maplewood side, we'll be touching bedrock during excavation, so it's,
Well, at least you won't have to truck that to Rochester.
Did they even take it in Rochester?
Oh, yeah, whole bad big score.
Yep.
Lot 3 and 4 are the worst of the contamination. Lot 5 isn't nearly as bad because it was under the original train station, not just trackside. So.
Nick, go ahead.
Well, I think it's awesome. We've got an opportunity to improve upon the last building. I think the HDC is going to like the fact that you're coming back with something different. Curious to see how they respond to the package. I don't know how different it is from what we got here at the work session, but I think it's going to be really important for you guys to make clear how that first floor commercial space is going to interface with the sidewalk. I'm sort of starting to see, Chimberg-esque design like down at Hannaford, where you've got almost a podium with that raised walkway, the elevated walkway with the ramp off the right and the steps off the left on Deer Street. It's not clear to me, looking at the drawings, how high the first floor is from the sidewalk. It looks like it's at least 6 feet down at the corner where you're turning in to go to the garage next to the bank. And this is a very different presentation than most of the buildings downtown, if it's in fact that high. And I get that the floor, it appears like the parking level is driving the height of the building by being so far out of the ground. You've got 6 feet of exposed parking, wall on the left on Deer Street, and something like 3 feet at the intersection with the lobby being cut into it to come in at grade, and then there's another 3 feet moving towards, it looks like that. I think it's got to be very clear to everybody, especially the HDC, what is going on. I mean, we spent a lot of time in this city activating our sidewalks with the buildings, and there's two things I see here that are very different from the general character of downtown Portsmouth. And it doesn't mean there aren't exceptions. We did the Connie Bean, we have the elevated corner at the bank there. Across the street, I believe that wall goes as high as 4 feet at the far end, but 4 is a big difference from 6. Just about everybody walking can see over it. A 6-foot wall, if it's actually that high at the 12 steps you've got going up, I just counted what was on here. And it could be an error, but there are a lot of steps. That's a big wall. There's a sidewalk that's gonna go along a very tall wall. You're not even gonna see the commercial space when you're along the high end of the wall where the steps are, because the wall's too tall to look over. And it's not a very intimate experience for a pedestrian to actually engage with that building going down Deer Street towards the garage, if I'm reading it right. And I think, in fairness to you guys, I think this needs to get in the 3D model, and we need to be able to really see cross-sections and details on that elevated walkway to see what is going on. Because obviously the HDC, I get the geotechnical stuff that's driving, at least in the presentation and prior conversations, what you're hoping to achieve in avoiding any deep digging, groundwater issues, dewatering issues. But it would be better in my mind if this was more like the building across the street than what I seem to be seeing, which is an exaggerated approach with taller walls, similar runs, similar grades. But again, maybe reading it wrong. I think you need to be very careful with that, because that ground floor elevation in the parking deck is driving everything. And it's creating problems that Terrence is trying to solve. I think putting landscaping around the edge of the building is totally out of character with downtown Portsmouth. You don't engage with a building here with a big, long planter along, you just have an entrance and then everything else is landscaped, because you're trying to perhaps take the curse off the exposed foundation of the parking that's behind that wall, because you're 36 to 5 feet above grade to get to the commercial space. So I think the trees and the sidewalk, like Dave said, are far better. Yeah, so I think the landscaping on the building is definitely, it doesn't mean you can't do new things in Portsmouth, don't get me wrong, but you're not doing things new in Portsmouth to do new things. You're doing them because your parking level isn't deep enough. And it's creating problems you're solving through architecture and landscaping to make it semi-pleasant to go by the building.
Well, I think I can address that in that all 3 buildings that you're mentioning, we did all 3 of them. We designed all 3 of them. So the Chinburg building is a huge, much larger podium with surrounding the entire building. You walk out onto a terrace and a path, and it's just a much bigger piece with a much longer drop off. The Connie Bean.
On the back, on the front side, it's at grade. It's not.
But I assumed you're talking about the big wall side when you're.
No, I'm talking about how it interfaces with the street, and it's a better interface than this one as it reads. So
And
that's what I
then,
meant.
if you look at the Connie Bean, or
Talking about
which is
brewery?
Yeah.
Brewery?
Yeah.
145 Brewery, yeah.
The one on the city lot.
Right, but if you're looking
Yeah, that's
at,
above the sidewalk.
Yeah, but not like the back. The back is a big drop off with the deck. That's not where the public goes.
Right.
It's going along
The
the
end of a
front.
parking lot side.
Yeah, that side.
right.
Yeah, that side steps up pretty far to the first floor.
From the sidewalk or
Yes.
further back from the building?
Right.
From the sidewalk to get to the building, you're going up a few
Yeah, that's
steps.
far enough back. that you-
Yeah, it's not on the sidewalk though, that lift. It's a big wide.
So
Space.
the Daniel Street building has, also wraps 2 sides, and it's quite a bit more extensive, around the entire building. I would say that this one is, once we work a little bit more with John on grading, because he just basically has the street grades in there right now, and we work with structural. We're just beginning structural, so we know what sort of floor to floors we have. Those will all come into play, but I think we're right across the street from Fidelity, so I think it's going to be very, very similar.
That's great.
Just to put your mind at ease, I think it's going to be very, very similar in, length, height, size, sort of volume
Good.
as Fidelity. It's not wrapping 2 sides.
So I can tell you your drawings don't lead someone to get there yet. So that's great if you
Yep.
can tighten
Yep.
those up.
Just don't want to put a finer point on it. Just yes or no answer, I guess, or you can answer longer. We went through great pains, though, not to put a parking garage entrance on the end of the building facing Deer Street.
Right.
Which I wouldn't be opposed to if you took, if there's a handball court on the street, which you're telling me there isn't, then I would take the garage door on the street any day over the handball court and putting it on the back. So let's see if we get it to look like 46 Maplewood. If it does, then I think if what you say is true, then this thing's probably going to be fine. I don't find it offensive, but this didn't look like anything like that.
Well, this building is going to, won't be that same style.
That's not the style I'm talking
Okay.
about, that's clear. So the landscaping piece is part of that, and I think that's still got to be worked out. The bulb outs go away, but I think sidewalks, and you look at the Connie Bean. The Connie Bean is an elevated sidewalk with street trees in the sidewalk. It's all there aren't 12 steps to get up onto anything. So, perhaps then the graphics are all going to get tighter, and it's going to look more like the Connie Bean's a comfortable elevation. Those to me are the ceilings, not the floor, as to how high you get before it starts to fall apart. And this looked like it was quite a bit higher than either of those two examples, to my eyes. So I'm glad to hear it's not likely the case. I think we need to get it into the 3D model sooner than later for everybody's benefit, including the people here. We've got the technology. Let's get your SketchUp drawing or whatever you did over to Jamie and get it in. We should have that for tomorrow. We've got it for Russell Street for tomorrow. We really need that.
There's no ramp drawn on here right now. This is you sketched one in.
I tried to guess how your drawings worked.
Okay.
The ramp is down here and the steps are there, but I could be all
Well,
wrong.
that's just the
It's a
gray
shadow
line.
or
I mean, it's
something?
very,
Yeah,
it's
again.
just the actual gray line, because we try not to make too much of a commitment until we actually get feedback from the board at this point.
I hear you, but this is a driver, right? You need to get this early so
Okay.
people aren't panicking later, and then you're going backwards because they're offended by it and they want it shortened, and then your floor to ceiling heights change, or you're digging a deeper hole, and then you're dealing with all the stuff that these guys are typically talking about with the geotechnical. I think it's just as important. That can't get left behind unless it's exactly like across the street. I don't think anybody will panic if that's what it looks like. Again, on the grade side. Well, close.
Right.
I think we need to see your,
Into the elevation of the floor across the street is 5.29, so,
meaning what?
meaning it's too low. It's too low.
It's too low what?
No, Steve
The
Kell's
garage
building
elevation
is quite deep.
What?
Is that
So-
Oh, that's 5.29 next door, the
And you-
floor basement?
Yeah, so,
Water table?
so a question I had that I don't need to get into, but I really want to know.
2.5
It,
feet.
it sounds like people are saying it's too low, it's bad. I want to know what the data is actually. Well, is it flooding like regularly? I mean, it would be good to have someone look at that. Maybe you might know that. But,
love to see it.
and there's a big difference between 5.2 and 8.
Right?
Every little bit's going to help.
Trees right now.
What?
It might be that close.
Yeah. Right, so I think that's the kind of stuff that we need to be looking at on the inside, because it affects this thing on the outside, which it seems like the 8 feet is
As long as your
conservative.
threshold is high enough that you don't have to worry about water bailing in from outside, then, and you have a watertight foundation.
Which
or
people
walk
do, yeah. All right, so I just think it'd be good for us as well on our side to get earlier the building height calculations, what your grade plane is, what your building height is, 5 feet around, 6 feet off. I'm curious as to whether your elevated walkway incorporates into your finished grade the added height you're adding to build that elevated walkway, because that's the podium thing that, again, it's not illegal to do that, but it's important to note, is this a 58-foot building with finished grade incorporating the elevated walkway or not? Because the elevated walkway is quite a bit higher than the sidewalk. So I think that's
The answer is it's 58 feet based on the existing grade plane.
existing grade plane.
Yep.
Okay, so not including the elevated.
We're not
yeah.
factoring.
No,
Good.
Yeah, for the record, we're not trying to build the tallest building in Portsmouth.
Boy, you wouldn't. 74 feet's boardwalk. You're not going to touch that with this. Yeah, you talked about the entrance spacing. You know, we obviously need to see an elevation that's tighter, but also Maplewood Ave. This
Yeah.
looks like only deer in order to look at some of the issues you presented orally here. And how the first floor height, what the measurements are around that building. Looked like maybe you were doing some of that here, but I couldn't tell what these numbers meant on the landscape plan. Facade modulation, make sure you don't miss that in respect to the 100-foot, you know, I know you know that, but,
Yep.
and the open space. So the last thing I would just say is, I think one thing you guys need to consider is, you know, you're building a taller building than the 50 feet that's allowed, and the zoning allows for a 60-foot building, but it allows for it with community space or workforce housing, and obviously the last candidate came in and went for the 58, 59 feet, or even 60 with workforce housing. All I'm wanting to caution you is, you're asking for zoning relief for building height for something that has already in the code a mechanism without a variance to get a 60-foot building. I get your penthouse is smaller, you know, it's a penthouse, it's a smaller floor than what your predecessor submitted. But keep in mind, I don't think anybody, the zoning is not offended, and nobody has yet told you they're offended with a 5-story building here. The zoning says you can do it. The prior project was approved with it. You've gone to 4 stories with a penthouse. You have a right to do that. But keep in mind, you know, you're asking for a variance instead of providing the benefits that are already articulated, well articulated in the ordinance as to how you get there. So I'm just putting that out there.
There's relief through workforce housing, and I think you should be prepared to kind of defend that question before the zoning board of adjustment, and I think the planning board is likely to drill down on that as well, about why that is not, you know, something that, and why that won't work. I think, just to reiterate what Nick said, the planning board's going to be concerned in their conclusion of design review phase about the height and massing and your justification for not going entirely below grade for your parking, what the reasoning for, I know that there's been, you've explained a little bit about that today, expect to be pressed about that. They are concerned about those things lately. And so I think both of those things you can expect to be put through the paces on a little bit.
All right.
Are you finished, Nick?
Yep, I think so.
Any other comments or questions? Do you have any other comments or questions at this point?
Yeah, I think, John, you're going to have a traffic study updated for that.
If I can hire somebody. I've been trying for a month and a half. Did they call you, by the way?
Yeah.
Anybody from TEC call you?
Yep.
Well, that's a
Amy
good sign.
McCarty, what did you say, what you do in what you do in it?
I don't think that's going to be coming.
There's just.
Oh, they're not going?
It doesn't look that way.
It's all right.
Oh, well, they didn't let me know, so now I know to find somebody else, okay.
I mean, they have a whole host of various.
So is this like,
It's just the.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
they could,
just
but
the-
they'd prefer
you know,
not to.
just the middle.
your application?
Okay.
If you were gonna have that last meeting
Yeah.
where we're just, I mean, we're in.
Because they may end up doing the peer review for it.
We were massive.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
They've been doing all the peer reviews in the area.
All right. Fair enough.
And massive.
All we have,
I heard it here.
we had a little more than that for Russell. It's a great cube, but it's
All right.
articulated. well.
We've got a little articulation.
Yeah, I mean, we would normally get that for normal.
Yeah, we motion to adjourn?
This, we want to move on.
Second? All in favor?
Days.
All right.
And that's a sensitive area, so I'm